Thanks for joining us for today. Now, without further ado, we're going to jump into the Facebook session about the viral loop. And I've got Christian, who was a mentor with Seedcamp since 2007, 8? 7, see? So we've got lots of, after some newcomers in the first mentoring session, first keynote session, we've now got Christian leading it from Facebook side. And I think, well, I'm really excited to hear about the possibilities of using the Open Graph for viral growth. And afterwards, we're going to have Kat from King.com and Matt from Mixcloud, phonetically chosen, obviously. And they're going to share how a large startup with a big user base and a very small startup with almost no user base have used Facebook and the technologies available to grow their user base and to further engage their user base. So off we go.
And what I wanted to do today was talk at a very high level about how you should think about Facebook and the distribution and viral components that we provide. But more importantly, pass it over to two people who have actually had experience building on top of it and benefiting from it. They'll actually relate to you much better than I will, because I haven't built a product in a long, long time, but also be able to tell you some of the do's and don'ts and challenges of working on top of the platform. So we'll do 15 minutes each and then do Q&A, which I think will be probably more interesting and more impactful. So what's Facebook? At the end of the day, we talk about Facebook as a platform where 950 million monthly active users, over 500 million daily active users. That's great in terms of an audience, but you as actually application developers or service developers should think of us as a distribution platform, mainly a free distribution platform. And if you do it right, if you actually tap into the right components of the platform, a very, very good viral distribution platform, which, by the way, you can enhance with ads and kind of boost the virality. But at the core, if you actually nail it, we should be giving you this massive growth that I'll show you in a couple of graphs, and then Matt and Kat will talk about in their own experiences. So let's first lay down the lingo of what I'm going to talk about. Good. So this is just going to be kind of level setting of names that I'm going to use for different metrics to track, right? So monthly unique users is the people that come to your site or to your app or to your service. We often talk about monthly active users. Those are people that are authenticated with Facebook in your site or app or mobile app. Within those, we have daily active users. Those are returned every single day. So back to the stats that I just quoted, Facebook has 950 million monthly active users, out of which 500 million plus come back every single day. And any kind of measure of engagement, that's pretty good engagement. So the notion of these people are addicted to the service, come back fairly regularly. The number of people that also come back on mobile device on a daily basis is quite high. And then we have this one that I want to specifically explain because it's actually what we track. Open Graph publishing daily active users. What it means is that people who came to your application actually wrote something back to the Facebook graph on a daily basis. And somewhere in Facebook, that action was shared with their friends. So the easy example to think about is if you use Spotify, you go to Spotify, you listen to 10 songs on Spotify, so that actually wrote 10 different actions, but we only track one for this metric. In a sense, it's a good way to actually, normalize for apps that actually share a lot, like a Pinterest or a Spotify, but also a good way to actually make sure you're capturing as much value from distribution from every single user that comes to your service every day. So I spent a second there just to explain it because it's a metric that we don't talk about publicly very often, but it's actually the metric that most matters to us because it means that people are leveraging the graph in the right way. So the first thing we'll focus on is ratios. Publishing daily active users to daily active users. How do you increase that? Secondly, how do you actually increase the engagement? People come back daily over your monthly active users. The gaming guys live and die by this metric. And finally, how do you make as many of your total users Facebook auth users? The assumption here is that if a user is actually authenticated with Facebook, that will give you some goodness around virality and distribution. You get their data and the insights of who they are and on their friends as well. Right? So the next couple of slides are going to walk you through how to think about these ratios and increase them, with the assumption that doing so will actually provide up and to the right growth curves. This is not my cheesy animation, just for the record. So PDAU, publishing daily active users to daily active users. So, I'll jump through the cheesy growth here. It gets really big. That's what it matters. Thank you. Actually, the funny thing is that's one of our engineers who built that slide, obviously not a marketing person. So increasing PDAU to DAU ratio. If you've actually used any app on Facebook, you've probably seen that dialog. It's a permission dialog, or the new permission dialog for the app, in which you're effectively asking me as a user to allow you, the application, to know who I am, to know my information about who I am, what my demographics are, who my friends are, perhaps my check-ins, perhaps my information about the likes that I've had, the songs that I've listened to. More information that you will ever have about a user. Right? There's no way I would ever go to any single service and answer questions in any sort of questionnaire that would give you the level of detail and insight into who I am than by simply clicking OK on the permission dialog from Facebook. 99% of the apps out there throw this data away, which irritates me to a very high degree. If that data is actually so valuable, if the insight into your customer is really so rich, why would you not take it and actually gain some insight from it? And as you gain insight, also do something actionable for the user that leads them down the right path to enjoy your service, discover content, engage with their friends, share content back. Interesting thing with the permission dialog is we've been playing with it over time to figure out how more people recognize what it is and accept what it is. Two things that will actually drive a large negative response from users is the scary second screen of death. There's a couple of permissions that we call extended permissions. For example, my friends likes, or publish to my wall, or always be on as me and publish on my behalf. Those are actually 3 permissions that usually get people to react in a negative way and say no. So what we've done is allowed the user to now actually decide which ones they're not going to allow you to have and still go on into the app. Until recently, either it was all or nothing, yes on everything, or you were not going to go in. That's important because really think about what data you do need rather than just asking for everything. Have you ever seen one of those apps that asks for like 8 different things? High probability you said no to that. Why would you want to have all that information? And secondly, educate the user as to why you're asking for this information. Why is it important for me to share this with you, and what am I going to get in return? And last week at the Apple event, they launched the new iPhone, obviously, but they also talked about iOS 6. The beautiful thing about iOS 6 is that this permission dialog is actually now native to the Apple OS. So the user will actually get the permission dialog within the look and feel of the iOS. We assume that will mean a lot more people engaging with it and accepting it. So if you're actually thinking about mobile as well as web, that should mean higher conversions and more opt users from the web. By the way, if they say yes on a mobile device, that also means they've said yes to your overall service, so that you should not prompt them again on the web. Great example of upselling. Before I even see the permission dialog, this very clearly explains why I should actually say yes to you when I see that permission dialog. This is what's going to happen. This is the goodness that I'm going to receive in return for sharing with you my identity and my information. This is from a great service called Mixcloud. I'll let Matt talk to it and how it's actually worked for them. And this is actually my new favorite website, Appliances Online. They actually built this widget themselves in which they combine a kind of social nudge by telling you which of your friends are already actually engaged with the site. These little pictures are a massive driver of authentication. Seeing your friends in a website gives you kind of this happy feeling that it's a good place to be. My friends are here. I should be with them. Higher conversion rate. This middle piece is comments from their page. So effectively, they're combining their Facebook page with their website to, again, build that sense of community. And the call to action is here. The notion of logging in with Facebook and authenticating and seeing that permission dialog. According to Social Bakers, that's this site that actually tracks engagement across pages, this was the most engaged with Facebook page in all of the UK after they launched this little widget. Nice little hack. I've actually never met him personally, but I never would have thought that an appliance e-commerce site would have actually been that smart about using social as a driver. Second kind of trick on how to increase publishing daily active users to daily active users. Make every action on your site an open graph action. Many of you probably have a Facebook page. So let's say you've actually done really well and you have 100,000 followers on your page. Only a small percentage of those followers, let's say about 15% on average, will actually see anything you post on your page. Right? So you can actually invest into growing all the fans that you want, but it's still going to be just your voice, and only a small number of those will actually see that message. At the same time, you might have 1 million users who are all publishing onto Facebook, and each of them has an average of 130 friends. So a percentage of them will see it. So use friends as your voice. Allow users to actually take actions on your site and publish that back to Facebook. Let's take the example of Pinterest. Everything you do on Pinterest is an open graph action. Creation of a board, following somebody, liking, repinning, all those get written as stories back to Facebook. If you're concerned about spam, there's also a way of actually writing back actions from the open graph and not making them visible. I call them dark actions. We have some nicer marketing term for it. But the notion that you still capture the information, and then when there's enough of it, you can actually aggregate it into a meaningful story on the graph, on the timeline. So think about how everything that happens on your website can be replicated so that the people who are engaging with you on the site are also talking about you, about your service, back on the site. To the example of Spotify, Spotify has a number of actions, but one of the best actions for them was actually the notion of playlists, creation of playlists, and subscribing to playlists. They took the objects they had, song, artist, album, which was effectively dictated by the labels, and they created this meta object on top of it, which is my curation of objects into my own object, which, by the way, is now a Spotify object that they kind of own, but actually something that I can talk about with my friends and share with my friends, and has the highest viral component in terms of people engaging with it, sharing it, subscribing to it, commenting on it. So examples here from SoundCloud, I think that's Airbnb, also that's Pinterest, that's Pinterest as well. So any action that actually you engage with on your site also being an open graph action. There we go. Think about cross-platform, and this actually is something that people usually don't consider, and I talked about it with one of the teams earlier on. You're building a website and you're building a mobile app. You're building identity on the website, but you never really thought about adding identity to the mobile app. Why? At the end of the day, it's the same service, it's just being engaged with in a different medium, right? Do all the right UX work so the right experience happens on the mobile device or on the website. But once I've said yes to your service and I'm logged in, we as Facebook think that the user has said yes to Pinterest. So any Pinterest experience, you've already said yes to. When I land on a mobile device, we have a thing that allows you to automatically log the user in. They already gave you permission. Don't ask for the login again. Increase the ability for the user to come into the site and start publishing again. So in the case of SoundCloud, they've actually done a really good job of integrating identity and open graph across every single platform they have, from native to mobile to Android to their OS X app. So if this works properly, all goodness, things grow. Secondly, second ratio we talked about, DAU to MAU. How do you actually drive engagement? And Kat's going to talk about some of the kind of secrets from the gaming side of how they use notification channels to ensure that they're reminding you to come back every single day, and that when the right actions happen, that you're actually notified and actioned on it. Auto login, second biggest pet peeve that I have. I land on a site, I said yes to you last week, you asked me to log in again. Why? I already gave you permission. We have a token that can actually exist for a certain amount of time, in which if I already said yes, that user should come in and be auto-logged in. So they already said yes. By the way, they're probably signed into Facebook while they're browsing the web. They've probably used your site in the last 30 days. Let them come into your site. Don't put another fictitious barrier, again, on the assumption that being logged in is actually a good thing. And this is actually where this secret API, and probably I would say one of the most important API calls, comes in. FB get login status, I think Matt's going to talk about it as well. It's a very simple ping. Is this user logged into Facebook? You don't know nothing about who the user is, but they land on your site. You ping us and you say, is this user logged into Facebook? And we return a yes or a no. If we return a yes, the user is logged in. That means they're already kind of thinking, leaning forward in terms of like social context, more likely to accept the permission dialog if you upsell them in the right way. If they're actually logged in, you can check if they actually already authorized you and just logged them in seamlessly. So when they land, it says, hello, Christian, welcome back. Here's the latest stuff we've been waiting for you to see. Matt has a really good example and has a bit more code than I do about why this is so important. This is what happens when auto login is done correctly. You're going along your merry way. Your user ratio is fairly flat. Magic happens. You turn on auto login, and all of a sudden, all those users are magically identified. You know who they are. You know they came back. You've actually brought them in. And if you did it right, they'll also start publishing back and generating free virality, free marketing on your behalf. Please. then this actually is an interesting debate, because just because you're using Facebook as an identity platform doesn't mean you should not do the other things you would traditionally do to re-engage users. We actually have a fairly good SEO team. We have a fairly good team focused on email marketing. Just try it. Don't use Facebook for 60 days. I guarantee you will get an email from Facebook encouraging you to come back. This friend of yours just had a birthday. Why don't you come back? This person just had a baby. Hey, we've been waiting for you to come back. Just touch them in the right medium with the right message to re-engage them. When I talk to a startup, the first thing I usually look at is their total auth users versus their monthly active users. Effectively, how many users have gone stale? And my first question usually is, how are you connecting with the 85,000 users that are no longer coming back? Are you sending them emails because you have their email? Are you actually reaching out to them in some special way to re-engage them? If they said yes, if they authed you already and you know who they are, they've kind of unlocked themselves to you, please go back and re-engage and use email marketing or push notifications or app-to-user channels that we provide to bring them back into the site. Everybody still with me? Yep. Good. So all goodness, we've now grown hopefully 2 ratios, DAU to MAU. Making as many of your users as possible auth users. Again, on the assumption this is actually something good for you. The upsell is actually probably the most important part, and this is actually where we can't help. Right? We can't help you tell the user what the value proposition is as to why they should actually be logged in. Neither can we actually figure out how, well, we can give you this FB get login status, but how do you actually help users who are landing blindly in your site go into this magical social path? So think about how they're actually going to use us as a promotional vehicle, as a technology vehicle to actually determine whether they're actually really leaning in socially, and then actually use some marketing pizzazz to tell them why they should log in. 2 examples here. Wall Street Journal Social, which effectively outlines, before you even see the permission dialog again, why you should actually be saying yes to it. This is all your copy, right? You can control this. The permission dialog is fairly small in how much copy you can actually put into it. But here you can actually have as much canvas as you want to educate them visually on what they're going to do when they say yes. This is a Deezer. When you actually log in with Facebook, they allow you to sign up with Facebook or not. When this actually gets shown, simple design, the blue one gets more click-through rates than the grayed out one. But for them it's good because when you log in with Facebook, they also have the friends. And once they have the friends, they can start recommending music from the other friends that are there. What I don't have here that actually is, as I said before, quite powerful is the friends pictures. Where you can actually show, when I arrive, it's actually a widget you can use from our site. You can actually show your friends that are already in that site or in that service. Yes, sir?
Maybe use the kind of Facebook branding a little bit, like a color combination and stuff. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, so the F logo is actually, you can use that. There's a brand guidelines.
I mean more like the colors and the people.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you're not impersonating Facebook or actually using the Facebook full logo, which requires our brand gods to actually say yes. Yeah. I mean, in a way, you're asking them to go into a Facebook experience, right? So I think this is the right level of upsell. Visually, it kind of tells you it's going to be a place where your friends are listening to music. So think about pictures. For some reason, the magic number is 3. When you see 1 friend, your click-through rate goes up. 2 friends, it goes up a little bit more. When you see 3 friends, it goes up 10x. And I don't know if it's because the number of friends once you have 3, and then actually it plateaus after that. So it's 3 friends and more just means that it's a good place. Enough of my friends are here. But anyways, use visual cues. And the strongest visual cue in a social environment is your friends' pictures, which you can use from us for free, please. So we've talked about a couple of things. I'm going to recap it fairly quickly, and then I want to pass it on to King and to Mixcloud. We talked about the ratios and how we give you tools for all of those. We talked about the value of actually having an auth user and how that auth user can then have all the social components, how to upsell them. We talked about how publishing all the actions on your site back to Facebook should drive distribution, and we have enough examples across different verticals that I can drill deeply into, but I only have 15 minutes. We take care of distribution. If people are actually massively engaged with your service and publishing it back to Facebook, and there's a lot of likes and comments and resharing, it's a very strong signal to our algorithm that this app is a good app, and that means we'll actually start dialing up how much distribution you get. It also means that you'll show up in other parts of the site where apps are featured or highlighted. App Center is probably the best example where when you land in App Center, the recommendations are partly social, partly algorithmic. High quality apps with Facebook login where people are actively engaged show up at the top. Your friends' recommendations are prominent by category. And this applies across channels, web apps or mobile apps. We have some promotional units on the App Center as well that actually recommend for you to discover new apps or rate new apps. And now we have some new ad products that are actually quite interesting. I'll just touch on it really briefly, but we're trialing it right now with a couple of mobile partners. But I think this is actually going to be, I'm biased, but I think it's actually going to be quite interesting. We have 500 million plus monthly active users. People who actually consume a large amount of time on Facebook on their mobile device. So we have volume. But then we also know who the people are. We know that you're a 25-year-old male living in Slovenia, as most of the Seedcamp companies seem to do. So the ability to actually have both breadth and then targeting. Let's say your app is ideally suited for 25-year-old males living in Slovenia. So you want to target people on an iOS device in Slovenia who are 25 or older. So we give you that targeting capability. So when somebody's on their mobile device, you can they can see an ad unit that says install your friend is using this app. Would you like to install it? The user installs it and actually drives through directly to the App Store. We send 100 million plus links to the Apple Store every single day. I don't know how we rank in terms of traffic to the store, but that's actually quite a lot. Most people don't think about how the organic conversation, friends talking about your apps or friends talking about your service, is a very good organic driver of distribution on mobile devices. Leverage it. Just simply allow users to talk more and more about you. Matt's going to have a slide that talks about what I call the funnel, how conversation about your stuff on Facebook gets amplified, people share, like, comment, and how when people click on it, they land on your site or they land on the Apple Store, and how that should drive distribution. And if you log them back in, and actually they accept, and their friends are all there, it all drives goodness. And that's what we call the viral loop, right? So I'm going to pass it to Kat first. Kat's the head of studio at King. She previously was at Playfish, so she's been around the block a couple times on this social gaming space. She just landed off a plane this morning from running, I don't know how many, 20-something miles, so she might be a bit slow. Give her some chance. Game companies are probably the best at using the viral channel, right? Zynga spammed the heck out of us with sheep early on. And over time, as we got better about how to clean up the graph, if you will, they actually got smarter about other ways of engaging with it. These guys actually crunch data on a daily, if not second-by-second basis about how people are interacting with their games. I always joke that the social gaming companies that succeed are data analytics companies first who happen to have a gaming front end. So they know our virality channel is the best because that's what they live and die by. Secondly, Matt is the CTO and founder of Mixcloud. A little secret about Matt, apparently he applied to Seedcamp a couple of years ago. I'll caveat this by saying that Matt is probably one of the most proficient and deeply experts on the Facebook platform and on technologists in London. But he got dinged by the Seedcamp team because they didn't think he could build a website. So whoever was looking at his application a couple of years ago, you missed one on this guy. And he'll talk about how Mixcloud has bet very heavily on Facebook for growth and how they actually used it for viral channels for effectively a field that's quite busy, right? Music on Facebook or social discovery of music. And I appreciate you both coming in today and spending some time with the Seedcamp guys. So I'll pass it over to Kat.
Hello. As Christian said, I'm Kat Lavers-Malay. I lead the London studio at King.com. Christian asked me to speak a little bit about the kind of evolution of virality and how we think about virality at King. A few comments just for, is this working? It feels really uneven. Yeah? Yep. Okay. Some notes just for context. At King, we had an eventful year. Last year, we were 30 or so in the Facebook developer rankings. We're now number 2. We are number 3 overall. Before the launch of our breakthrough hit Bubble Witch Saga last fall, we had about 300 million gameplays per month. Then we went on Facebook. We now have 3 billion gameplays per month. And it's been pretty much entirely through Facebook Virality. So go Facebook. We have 2 games in the top 10 on Facebook. We have 50 million MAU. We have 12 million DAU, and 3 games above 1 million DAU. So it's been a really fun year. We've learned an awful lot about player acquisition. We get players through performance-based marketing. So we spend quite a lot of money on ads, but it's entirely based on the monetization of players, and through viral messaging. And we spend a lot of time and effort optimizing both. Unfortunately, I can't give you anything. I can't give you any specific metrics, but I was hoping to give a little bit of insight into kind of just how we think about virality. Obviously, most of this experience is games and specifically Facebook on canvas, but I think a lot of the ways that you think about virality apply, whether it's iOS or Facebook or on canvas or web or what have you. So back to basics. There's a couple rules that I kind of always think about when making decisions around virality. Rule number 1 is an adaptation of the bathtub theory that you might have heard of Econ 101. It's usually applied to government deficits. It works really well for games or apps as well. So acquisition, it's the water going into the tub. Engagement is the water in the tub, and churn is the stuff going down the drain. You have to optimize around all 3. It's really easy to just focus on just getting in new players or just focusing on retention, but you need to have a different strategy for each one of those things because they're all going to happen. Rule number 2 is equally simple. Free is better than not free. So try to maximize all the stuff you can get with virality, cross-promo, friends telling friends, you telling people, all these things that you can do without spending money on advertising. Do that stuff first. It sounds really obvious, but often you just get really excited, you start seeing things going, you just want to go with the advertising, and then you end up spending a bunch of money that you don't really need to spend.
Let's spend it anyways.
Then spend it. So a brief history of Facebook virality. The Facebook platform is constantly evolving. What works one month might not work well at all the next. What works for one app might not work for another. It's important to keep experimenting and be flexible in your app design to allow for different channels. So if you put in a feature, maybe you want to try it with wall post once and then you want to switch it to an open graph, something, just build it so that it's flexible enough that you can change because the platform will change under you otherwise. Facebook's always working on finding a balance that allows players to discover apps and games they find interesting without being overwhelmed by spam. Sometimes these changes will work to your benefit, sometimes they won't. In 2010, the notifications channel became so spammy that Facebook shut it down. You basically no longer had any way to talk to your players or users on a one-to-one basis. I call it the dark days of virality. If you look at the charts of pretty much every app, they just went, and the only way you could get players or users was through advertising. It wasn't fun. Recently, though, Facebook's been doing, this is just not working, has been doing quite a lot to improve virality. And there's quite a lot of options. So you've got timeline, app to users, feed stories, bookmarks, cross promos, wall posts, open mobile discovery, fan pages. It's really hard to keep track. And there's really no fast or hard rule around what works better. You just kind of have to experiment, which isn't necessarily the most insightful advice I can give. I think if you're relying on virality to grow, you need to design from virality from the very beginning. You can't just build your app and then slap on virality at the end. It needs to be part of the process. Same thing with monetization, right? You can't have a free app and then decide to charge for something at the end. It's going to be transparent and it's probably not going to work. So there's a few simple questions that we ask ourselves throughout the design process, whether we're designing at the game level or figuring out what virality channel we're going to use or even just what the copy is going to be. First, who cares? Who's your audience? Don't just go after the best monetizing demographic. Go after the demographic that you understand. Figure this out. Second, is my app really social? Or is it just an app with social features? Both are fine, but you need to consider them in different ways. Is it a fun game or a fun app if I don't have any friends playing, is it possible to play without friends? Because you can get yourself into a pretty nasty death spiral that way, where nobody's going to invite friends in for something if they don't know it's fun, if it's only fun if you have friends. See what I'm saying? It's not fun. It matters. I think this is a really hard one to get your head around as well. When you are trying to come up with a viral, part of the reason why song pop was able to grow so quickly is that music is something that everyone can relate to. Similarly, when Farmville first introduced the Lost Cow feeds, you guys remember those? Nobody knew why you cared about a lost cow. Kind of knew that Farmville was a game, maybe. But that lost cow was really cute. And you wanted to take care of that lost cow or that lost puppy or whatever it was, and so you would click, help the lost cow. And you're like, oh, I just opened this? I didn't mean to do that, but okay. Make your viral copy and images relevant to the audience, unfamiliar with what your app is. It's a challenge, but it's worth paying attention to. Forget the 30-second elevator pitch. You don't have it. You have 10 words or so. Figure out how to describe the service that you're offering and why it's amazing in something that can fit into a tiny, tiny little notification. So I'm going to spend another few minutes just going through some of the more specific channels and features and how we think about them. Again, these are very specific to Facebook on Canvas, but you can kind of extrapolate and figure out how it makes sense for you. Facebook has a really good set of opportunities to promote your game or your app for you. There's discover new games, there's bookmarks, there's App Center. Same thing applies for iOS. The App Center, for us at least, isn't a make or break feature, but it can definitely provide a really big boost. Unfortunately, the process for being included is pretty much out of your control, but it all starts with making a great app with really strong ratings and high virality, and obviously having people authorized. Bookmarks are also a really effective way to drive re-engagement. So the bookmarks will show up on, does this do a thing? On the left side of your game, of your feed, and then these ones down on the bottom, on the top right. Those red callouts or roosters, that's just a ticker of how many requests you've got, and they're incredibly effective at getting attention. People will click on them just to clear out whatever it is. It says 20 plus. I don't even know what it is, but I want to get rid of that 20 plus. So I'll go in and close that out. The more frequently and recently a user interacts with an app, the more prominently that app gets bookmarked. So it's worthwhile just having those requests just to keep things at top of mind. So the notifications channel is the one with the globe. It's super, super powerful. It's one of the most powerful channels that we've got. Since I can't give out metrics, I've had to kind of rate things in star value based on how effective we find them. Everything is on a 1 to 3 star basis. Notification channels is a really strong source of install traffic and a really good channel for re-engagement. It's just great all around. There's several different types of requests and notifications that fall into their channels, and they all have different quirks, but worth getting familiar with them and testing out which ones work best for you. The most common type are requests. These are the bread and butter of any social app. They're basically their own currency. Users are commonly asked to either send a request, spend real money, or wait for the resource in games, whether it's energy, lives, crops, whatever, to refresh, and then allow the users to spend the currency that they feel has the right level of value for what they feel like they're receiving in return. Many games and apps have implemented in-app handlers for rapid acceptance of these requests. These are high volume, low individual value, so really what the actual request is tends to not matter so much. It's just keeping that app top of mind and making sure that bookmark stays up there. Facebook will also limit the number of requests that you get, so there's a little bit of a built-in spam filter there. They'll just not send those requests through if it gets to be too much. Invites are among the most powerful tool that we have for app discovery. they provide social validation and land credibility. I'm much more likely to try an app that comes from a friend than something that comes from an ad. Players will rarely trigger the invite button on their own, so you'll want to pop something up reminding them to invite friends and explain why it's good to have friends when you're interacting with this game or app. App-to-user notifications are pretty new. They were re-released how long ago, Christian? Like a month or so? App-to-user?
A couple weeks ago.
Couple weeks. So this is basically a revival of the channel that got spammed out in 2010, but it has a lot more natural breaks in it. So it now allows the app to send a notification directly to a user. So it's a one-to-one communication between you and your user. So it's super, super valuable. So you can say there's new content, there's new levels, we fixed a bug, whatever you want. However, it's super high reward, also super, super high risk. There is now a little X that pops up there. It's actually in all requests, but players or users are much more likely to reject it on something that isn't coming from a friend. And you can then turn off notifications from that app, which means that player or user, you can never communicate with that user again. So if you are overly spammy, they can just shut you off. So use it with discretion, but it's a really good one, and we're happy it's been reintroduced. Yeah, so if they do that, the only thing you can then communicate with them is through email or other off-canvas tools, which have a much lower response rate. One-to-many feed posts, again, very specific to Facebook on Canvas. It's good for discovery and re-engagement. It's not as effective as some of the other tools. And one-to-one feed posts are much more effective. So really anything that is one-to-one is going to be more effective than something that is one-to-many, which makes sense. And the last topic I've got is Open Graph, which I'm really not going to talk about at all because Matt's going to talk about Open Graph.
Am I?
I guess so. I won't really talk about this much more beyond than to say that the more relevant you make your Open Graph posts, the more successful they're going to be. So as with all of this stuff, think about who cares. And we're not actually going to do questions, so I'll skip this slide too.
Well, we are.
But I mean, at the end. But I'd say there's many, many more ways to reach your players: fan pages, email, targeted ads, cross-platform promotions, cross-promotions within your network, with other networks. So this is really just kind of a flavor of the tools that are available, and just keep experimenting and play around with it and look at the data. Just always, always, always look at the data. Thank you. 14:30.
Here we go. Hey, so my name's Matt. I'm one of the co-founders and CTO at a company called Mixcloud. We're a London startup based about 100 yards that way. And we bet heavily on Facebook about 3 years ago. So I'm going to talk you through some of the bits where we found great traction and some of the bits which we didn't. But there's more the good than the bad. To give you a background, we launched 3 years ago from 0 user base. We're now put it this way, we're closing in on 10 mil. That's our aim right now, 10 mil daily actives, monthly actives. We've never raised funding, and we've never spent a penny on advertising. Most of our growth comes off Facebook. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. The first question I get when I give these talks is, Facebook's not for my industry, it's not for me. That's not necessarily true. And what we're seeing right now is lots of great social players entering new industries, and industries are falling to social. What I would advise you to go and do today is the next 2 slides. These are kind of the key to understanding whether social will drive your growth and whether it will work for your industry. The first one is, does it even make sense? This is a small bit of code, really small, copy and paste it from the slide deck afterwards, which will tell you in Google Analytics what percentage of your users are logged in on Facebook when they visit your site. If you see that 90% of your users are logged in with Facebook, chances are Facebook Connect will work pretty well for you. If you find 5% are, and you won't, I'd be surprised if you do anyway. I've never yet seen a site that low, then maybe don't consider it. The next one is insights. How many of you guys have actually bothered to enable this on your platforms? It is one meta tag, and from there you open up a vast wealth of data about how people are engaging with your site already.
You've never installed Facebook, but what this will do is give you access to the data which is already there about how people are sharing your URLs. If users are copying and pasting your URLs today from the address bar and posting them to their timeline and their walls, it's great to know about that, because what you can get is hints about what types of objects, what URLs your users want to share already, and you're not enabling them to do that through the Open Graph. So if you enable this today, as I say, it's one line, you'll end up seeing some interesting data. I mean, this is our data from about 11 months ago, so this is October last year. So we went from 0 to 11 months ago, we were closing in on 500 million monthly impressions, and we've seen 10x that over the last 12 months. This is not small traffic. This is the kind of thing that makes or breaks an industry. And this is not what we were driving through Open Graph. This is what was happening organically. This is people copying and pasting content. So I'd advise you today to go and put those 2 tags on there and actually work out whether social can work for your site and whether it's an advantage you have over all your competitors. So let's assume it does work. I've seen so many sites now, from builders, merchants, to large dating sites which never thought social was for them. Dating sites has this stigma, right? Nobody wants to share that they're dating. It turns out it works pretty well. They were surprised. So let's assume you want to do it, right? Open Graph there's 3 parts to it: identity, the user, and then there's actions and objects. I was assuming some of the guys were going to talk about this a bit more, so I'm going to kind of skip this. But what you need to do is find the simple objects which work for your site. For us, that's a track. It's a piece of music. For other people, it could be cooking a recipe, where cook is the action and the object is the recipe itself. If you distill down your site into these basic objects and actions, you can now build on the Open Graph. And what that allows you to do is take all the data about, or the actions your users are doing on your objects, and publish them into Facebook. And what you see there is you see this transition where it goes into the ticker, then it goes into timeline, and then it goes into the newsfeed. And you see growth from all 3 of those channels. The key to this whole thing, though, is after you've got these objects and these actions defined, is actually to tackle authentication. And what we find is that the biggest growth factor you can ever get is tweaking your authentication flow. It's actually dealing with that top end of the funnel. It's not fine-tuning the bottom end. It's how do you get from 1% of your user base authenticating to 90% or to 100%. And there's a couple of ways we do that. Some work really well and some work not so well. So I'm going to talk you through what we do today. But the first thing to bear in mind is when you connect with Facebook, you're giving you're giving that app the right to publish to your timeline and to your feed. This is your identity. This is who you are. And you've got to respect that. What we've generally found is with the companies we work with is that certain things work and certain things don't. And there's a simple test for this, and we call it the T-shirt test. If you were to go down to the high street with a bunch of things on T-shirts and hand them out to the public, the next day, how many people would you expect to see wearing that T-shirt? If what you're trying to do is spam, they're not going to put that on their identity. They're not going to walk with it down the street. If what you're doing is cool, hip, it makes them look better, it makes them look cool to their friends, you'll probably get away with it, and they'll probably want to put it on there. They'll probably want to wear that T-shirt. And we see the same with social profiles, particularly with integration on timeline. So authentication. There's 2 or 3 different ways we do this. One is on the main website, we just pop an authentication dialog. I'm sure you guys have all seen this by now. This works pretty well, but what Christian was saying earlier about upselling beforehand and telling people why they want to go through this flow, that's critical. Regrettably, I don't have a slide for that today. The second one, which is the huge one, which I've not heard mentioned today, is auth referrals. This gives your users the ability to sign up for your application, either from App Center or from links within the Facebook feed. So what a user will do, they'll see one of their friends mention an action. They've listened to a song on Spotify. They will click that, it will pop up permissions dialog, very similar to this one. They'll authenticate, and then they will land on your site pre-authenticated. So you see a bit of drop off here. Some people reject, but actually the majority don't. And what we see is that this is huge at upselling from that 0 to that 90% of authenticated users. This drives our growth. This channel is by far one of the most powerful. However, if you introduce the second stage, this is where things go dramatically wrong. What you end up doing is you see your click-through rate just falls off. So my advice would be avoid this at all costs. Try and trim down your permissions. Try and go for publish actions and email only, because they're the ones which appear on the first page. Maybe some of the user likes ones. I'm not sure which page they're on at the moment. But have a play around with it and focus on step 1, not step 2, and try and abandon step 2 entirely if you can. So authentication. The second trick we've found, which also is a huge driver, is this is again a chunk of code, but this comes back to, again, what Christian was saying earlier, where if you can automatically log in your users, then when they come back to your site a month later, or 3 months later, they're already authenticated, and they can see at that point what their friends have done on your service. So this is pretty easy. It's one function call, FB get login status, and then we go into one of 3 modes. The user is either unknown, which means Facebook doesn't know who they are, so they're not logged into Facebook. Or it can come back as authenticated or not authenticated. And this tells us whether the user is already authenticated to our app or not. So if they're authenticated and we know who they are, we log them in. If they're not, then we can start doing some interesting tricks. So if, for example, the user is a Facebook user but not authenticated with our application, so we can do things like remove email signup, require them to sign up via Facebook. We're not the only site who does this, by the way. Netflix do this currently. So if you go to Netflix pre-signed in with Facebook, there's no email sign-up available to you, and you're forced through the Facebook sign-up flow because we see better distribution and viral growth there. Spotify also do similar tricks as well around this, but it's worth playing around with. We do, the other one you can probably see in here, if you're friendly with code, we do similar tricks from Google. So if traffic is coming from Google, we'll try and push you onto social because we've seen that's a great upsell factor. Again, during site flows, if you click play, try doing things like upsells. So we try these a lot. This one actually pops when the user comes from google.com and they've searched for a term. And we've noticed that you're logged in with Facebook. So we originally rolled this out last December, and I think we dropped bounce rate by 30%. For those guys who deal with analytics, dropping your bounce rate by 30% is a huge factor. Because everyone who goes on this, they see 4 or 5 of their friends are connected, they hit connect, and it grows from there. The next thing which is key to getting great distribution is social context. Facebook are the masters at this, and everybody else is still trying to learn how to do it. But what you'll notice from this is my newsfeed shot as of today. And to you guys, this probably doesn't mean anything, but when I look at this, I see Duncan has listened to a song, Alex is playing the Vil, Tony has uploaded photos. This means something to me, and that's because of social context. That's why this is engaging for me. So what you need to do when you play with your applications is figure out how do you do this? How do you make your application based around this premise? I'm going to talk to you a little bit now about what social design is and how you can kind of use it within your application to really drive growth. If you take a step back for a minute and think about relationships in your life, you can kind of put these on 2 axes. Short relationships to long relationships, intimate to formal. Everything you interact with on a daily basis, whether it's a human or an object or a brand, falls into this. So we have friends and family who are long, intimate relationships. We have work colleagues who are long and formal relationships. We have things like brands and services, which is where most of us will fit, which is a short, formal relationship. It's snappy. And then we have short, intimate relationships, like a girlfriend. The problem we've got, I shouldn't say that on camera, damn it. But what you need to think about this is that in the top right, we have a circle of trust. This is where and what we trust as human beings. But us as brands and services and applications fit in the bottom left. This is a disaster from social context point of view. And what you need to do is find some way of extending that circle of trust down into the brand. We need some way of bringing in social proof and context. And that's the way of solving this. So let's have a look at one example. Why do you think it's so powerful now that when you put 3 of your friends' faces next to a brand that they now actually click on it? It's because it brings that circle of trust down around the brand. And that's why this is so powerful. As Christian said, the tipping point seems to be 3. We've not observed this because it's hard for us to know how many are there. But I'll tell you now that we see a 200% increase when we put this next to a button. It just flies up. And it's a 1-line piece of code. It's even an iframe if you're that skeptical about JavaScript being on your site. The other way of doing this, and this is one we're kind of playing around a lot with at the moment, is on the upsell dialogue, don't just say Facebook is great or the Connect is great because of this. Actually try putting an activity feed on there and say, this is what my friends are doing right now this week on our app. This is why you should use it. This is how they're experiencing it, and this is what they're learning. So we're trying at the moment, and we're playing around with the recent activity plugin, dropping this in certain upsells, mainly the login dialogue, and that seems to be converting pretty well, better than the face bar, better than the little images, but you do need a bit more space, and you can't put it next to like a follow button, for example, because it's pretty huge. Both of these are a simple like XFBML tag, or you can do an iframe version again. What we do with the activity feed is we'll put it as a fallback. So if you don't have any friends using the application, we'll fall back to recommendations. So the activity feed was going to be blank. That's a big no-no. Let's fall back to recommendations and say 700 people have listened to this piece of content, 400 have clicked like on this. That, again, converts fantastically well. So after you've got some social design in there, and this is the key to essentially upselling, it's not the key for driving a recommendation algorithm, but it is the key to conversion and CRO, which is conversion rate optimization. You need to think about retention. And retention is something I've seen pretty much every single startup I know ignore in the social world. They all focus on getting new users. And let's face it, we all want a graph which looks like this. This is me sketching this from earlier today. And it's hard to get that, but when you think of it, your user base or your daily active users are built up of two things: new users and retained users. That's pretty much where everyone comes from. And the bulk of your users are actually retained, and only a small fraction of them are your new users for that day. So why do you all spend so much time in general focusing on acquiring new users when you're actually leaking so many out the back? We spend most of our time today on retention and how do we deal with that. And we've actually seen several case studies now of competitor of ours where we analyze them, and you see shapes like this. So if you just focus on the acquisition side, what you typically see is a rapid ramp up, plateau, then a rapid decline. And the reason for that is you end up with this hardcore group of users, which no matter what your product does, they'll stick around. But the actual bulk of users are normally fad. They're there just to try it quickly. I don't know how you guys see this in the gaming world, but we certainly see this in music. They hop around a lot. And what you've got to do is kind of focus on this core user base, which are fanatical about it, and get every single user to be that fanatical. Once you get your users returning 25 out of 30 days of a month, their retention rate, by definition, is through the roof, but they will now use the power of word of mouth to promote you. Until somebody's using your product 5 days out of 7, they're not going to tell their friends about it. As soon as you're on 5 days out of 7, word of mouth kicks in, and on Facebook, off of Facebook, it just starts driving everywhere. So I would focus on retention. To give you an idea, here's some live case studies of this happening. So within about 2 weeks, they went from 0 to 400,000 users, dropping down rapidly. And this is, if you're seeing this plateau within your application, you're seeing it slowly tend off, you need to basically, all alarm bells should be ringing. You need to fix this very quickly and focus on retention. The first way of spotting this is your daily active users will plateau first. So what my recommendation would be is focus on DAU divided by MAU, which is the percentage of your users returning daily. And focus on that and try and increase that by app-to-user notifications, email, which is the key permission we asked for earlier, and anything which can bring a user back. There's other workflows depending on exactly how you're trying to do it, but try and focus on those at the start. The third one I'll mention briefly, just before the end, is speed is everything in this game. The platform is evolving so rapidly that what happens on 1 week will not represent what's going to happen the next week. Learn when new features go out. We look at the Facebook documentation every Wednesday because they push on Tuesday US time. And by normally Wednesday afternoon, we're adapting and changing to what they pushed on the Tuesday. My recommendation would be try and keep up, move as fast as you can. Our launch window is 24 to 48 hours because that's your unique opportunity to get ahead of your competitors. So yeah, I think we're up to questions now.
Hello. So now you see what I mean about Seedcamp missing the boat on Matt. So, thank you.
Shit.
We'll repeat. No, actually, this one is not tied to the camera, so
No, it's not.
they'll have to repeat the questions because you have the camera mic.
Okay.
So to make it confusing. So we have officially 15 minutes, but honestly, we can hang around as long as you want. The only thing between us and drinks in my office is us. So we're here for you. Questions? All right, we'll start here and we'll go back.
I spent some time trying to integrate with Facebook, myself.
Yep.
Right, so I spent some time trying to integrate with some of the Facebook social APIs myself, and then I just decided to use oneall.com, similar to Jan, Rain, Gigia. Now, I'm in the position where they're not at all keeping up to speed with what you guys are releasing, and I can't use any of this cool stuff. So what's your recommendation there?
So we get that a lot. Question is, should I actually trust my identity to a third-party platform? So if you want to move quickly, yes, it's a nice kind of simple way, and they also give you a bunch of other platforms they'll support and some analytics on top of it and some conversion stuff. Downside is you're outsourcing it to a third party who might not have the incentive to move as quickly as you might. So especially for startups that are meant to move fast, my general philosophy would be no. If you're a media site that's going to have a very large integration across a fairly large site and you don't have a technical team, perhaps. At the same time, we work closely with those guys and we try to actually move them as fast as we can. I don't know if you've you probably haven't for games. I don't know if you've looked at them at all.
They keep trying to sell us on them. They keep phoning us up saying, do you want to migrate? No. Last time I looked, they were incredibly expensive and the technology was not that impressive and it was very behind the curve. Do you have the access tokens? Do you have access to those?
You can retain the access tokens.
In which case, I would look at moving over.
But we love our partners and we encourage an ecosystem of diversity, so.
You can't say that.
Another question completely unrelated. There's a lot of focus today on daily active users, but our business, for example, is not a daily business. Like I don't know how Facebook would look at this, to promote in the App Store or whatever.
Yeah, but it's actually the ratio, the right ratio, right? So you're sending me something on a monthly basis that I already paid for. I might want to have some notification that it's coming. So right now, most e-commerce sites are transactional, and then don't talk to me until I come back. You should be talking to me. So the notion of DAU to MAU is how do you get the user that would have come back that month? Well, first of all, how do you get them to come back in that month? And then how do you get them to come back perhaps more frequently? Fab's probably done the best at actually driving DAU to MAU ratio because they're talking to me every day about curation and design. I'm coming to them as much to shop as I am to browse. It depends on the type of model. Where I was playing with a site, I probably wouldn't expect to talk to you until 30 days from now when I get my first package. But I think there is value in e-commerce as well to increasing that ratio. And let's not call it DAU to MAU, let's call it short-term engagement versus long-term engagement.
I was wondering the actual presence.
Turn that mic now.
Is it working? Yes. Okay. So my question was: there's still fan pages in Facebook, and I wonder how the engagement, because you can with Open Graph you can basically integrate your web presence very deeply into Facebook. Does the fan page still have a value for you guys, and how do you use it in engaging with users? Is that compared to the website that you have that's already deeply integrated?
So I'll take that. We actually have our main fan page, which is for the product itself. That we use daily. Like we publish that Monday to Friday, once a day at least. And that's great for engaging with the community, getting new ideas and iterating the product. On top of that, we actually manage around about 500,000 pages for our clients. And we have people who upload content and we onboard their pages and manage those for them. Not entirely, but we'll allow them to connect that to their Mixcloud presence and we'll be posting to both simultaneously. So we see huge growth off that. It's probably accounts for 20% of our growth off Facebook. Most of it coming from the users who listen, spreading stuff. But we see pages as a key role and have a key part, but they're not yet integrated with the custom Open Graph. Are they? They're just you can publish individual objects. And I'd be intrigued to see if these guys are going to do anything there in the future, because that'd be huge for us.
Yeah, we use fan pages quite a lot. I think they're really good for intraday communication as well. They're just much faster. We use them for user tips and tricks, so here's what's going on, or just building community. So they serve more of a dialogue purpose, where Open Graph is a little bit more of a monologue.
All right, so how does it have to B2B presence? Because we have a B2B platform. We're not providing a solution for B2C.
I get this question a lot. It's actually an interesting question because, I mean, at the end of the day, the decision maker in the B2B process is still an individual, right? So, and the individual so likely, or let's say, you can assume might have a Facebook presence. So there's two channels. One, if you're selling cement, you can actually target ads to cement buyers on Facebook.
Yeah, but it's not too interesting if I share the activity on Facebook.
No, but not necessarily, because I think I'm a B2B consumer on Facebook because I work with a bunch of techies who are talking about social and they're all posting on Facebook. So my consumption of media and information also happens there. The challenge is I feel bad for my non-techie friends who I get kind of spam on. So I'll equate it to kind of building what I call vertical expert networks on Facebook. How do you actually build a community around whatever you're driving in terms of content? And how do you actually bring all the right people for that audience to your page or to your app? A brilliant example of this is the Royal Opera House here in the UK. They have a page, it's 100,000 fans, I think, but they let any user post to the page. It's become a community for opera lovers beyond just them as an entity. So they actually let it be a free-form community in which people talk about opera and share information. By the way, it's one of the largest sources of ticket buyers to the opera house. So how do you actually build communities of engineers or communities of designers in which they log in with a real identity, which is with us, and then actually talk to their peers? What was the name of the CAD company from last year? GrabCAD, right? So there's a bunch of designers who were logging into the GrabCAD with their Facebook identity and inviting their friends who were also designers into a destination that was a B2B marketplace for CAD designers. It's not going to happen on me. I'm too broad a network. It should happen on your platform.
So you showed us some tools about figuring out which users are visitors on your website or already logged into Facebook. Are there the same tools available on like iOS apps or similar tools?
Oh, as in to discover which of your users have Facebook enabled and
Yeah,
not.
like is this user
I
logged into
believe
Facebook?
get login status also works on those, but it's a totally different. You don't use the JavaScript SDK, you'd be using the iOS SDK for that.
And then so there's a thing called single. We'll talk about single sign-on.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that?
Well, you have the mic. I don't.
I have the mic, okay. So mobile, there's also something called single sign-on, which enables your users essentially to auth the app once and then keep coming back. So that deals with the recurring access token problem. That also goes across platform, like Christian was saying earlier. So if you auth the token on the website, it will also auth on the mobile. So you can log in on both simultaneously. Therefore, if your users authenticate on one, you can also do that check on the other and log them in.
Questions in the back?
We have this Facebook login on our website. We have this marketing software, and our customers may log in on our website with their Facebook account. And we find a problem that sometimes we just can't reach those people because they sign up. They were very early adopters of Facebook. They signed up because we see their user ID is very short. So we just can't reach them because the email address they signed up to Facebook is not valid anymore. They don't use it, so we can't reach them on Facebook. Do you have any solution for this?
I find that surprising, right? 'Cause at the end of the day, if you're going to change one email when you change emails, let's say you change employer, it's probably going to be your Facebook primary email because that's the one you're probably engaged with the longest. So the fact that it's no longer valid, it might be they still have their old email marked as primary, and you only get their primary email. So I have like 4 emails associated with my account. Honestly, there's another way of doing it, which is you log in with Facebook and then you actually ask them to validate the data for a profile. And then if the email's wrong, they can exit and input the new one. It'd be interesting. I'd love to know how many people actually change their email. That's actually surprising.
I have this is Ed Spiegel with Brentline Online. I have a question for the Facebook gentleman. With clicks per post, are you seeing a difference? First of all, are you tracking that over time with the engagement, aspect? And then are you seeing a difference with people posting in platform or outside of platform, where the just general trend for clicks per post? And you could talk about how that compares to Twitter.
So no, I don't know how it compares to Twitter. I mean, personally, or kind of the corporate line. I haven't looked into that. Generally, there's three voices in your timeline. If you're consuming timeline, right? There's your friends posting, so everything from a baby picture to the latest status update and check-in to an achievement on a game. So that's one voice. 2 is an official kind of brand presence, and that could be either a page that you follow or an app that's talking to you because they're giving permissions to post to you. Actually, I guess that was the third one, which is actually the app itself just talking to you and notifying you through different channels. And then there's actually timeline aggregation units, which is us taking all that noise and putting it into some sort of stylized view on your timeline. So a couple of things there. A surprisingly high amount of consumption experiences for apps start in the timeline. And I'm saying surprising because I actually didn't think that as many people would browse their friends' timelines and decide to start listening to music or listening to, or reading an article or playing a game from what their friends posted on their timeline. I mean, you probably see it already.
Yeah, I mean, so we've actually seen a transition in the last 4 weeks from us dominating timeline to going onto feed. And we've been talking to multiple partners. And we're generally seeing that as an app grows, they transition from timeline to feed. I don't know whether you're seeing that amongst other apps, but the guys I'm talking to, the larger guys generally do well on feed, and the smaller guys do really well on timeline. That's where we were getting our bulk of our stuff from until literally 2 weeks ago.
And then to your specific question on click-through rates on posts, honestly, it depends on the type of content, right? So it's all over the place. There's no generalization. So the beautiful thing is you can actually look at click-through rates by line item in your insights. The insights for domain that Matt showed, where every URL that got shared from your site onto Facebook, got reshared, commented on, amplified, you can look at that URL and see the click-through rate on a daily basis to figure out what was actually engaging. By the way, cheats, pictures are highly engaging, more conversations, videos, anything that's visual is going to drive more. What
about your average click per share though? Is your average click per share coming down, or do you track that sort of in aggregate?
I'm sure our product team looks at it. I don't know. I mean, I actually don't know. So, but the assumption is that it's not, because the amount of information being shared is going up exponentially. The amount of inventory actually is still finite, but the amount of engagement with the content is actually algorithmically optimized, so it's the most engaging content for you. But I don't know how the trend line's been going to occur. That's it. People just want beers.
Questions, or is everybody thirsty?
Is mobile canvas coming?
Mobile canvas, meaning a application that runs inside the Facebook wrapper.
On your mobile Facebook
Yep.
app.
So that exists today, right? So effectively, you can actually run an app inside of Chrome as long as it's a web application. When you click on it, it launches it. The more interesting thing for mobile is actually you being smart about telling us where you want the user to go to depending on where they are. So it's actually a developer setting. If you have a rich iOS app and you want them to go to the iOS app, give us the iOS app ID, and we'll lead them to the App Store. If it's already installed, they go directly to the app. If not, you can encourage them to download. Well, they go to the App Store and they download. If you don't have an Android app and the optimal endpoint for an Android user is mobile web, it'll just go to mobile web. So effectively, as you start building for different platforms, tell us so that we intelligently send the traffic from the right mobile platform to the right mobile endpoint. And by the way, we report on that. We report on traffic from different from different mobile platforms.
There's another cool trick you can do around that. If you have got the basic auth permissions, you can look at what devices that user uses. So you can work out whether they use Android or iPhone, and you can work out what devices their friends use as well. So you can now target your recommendations or your invites to people who only have iPhone devices. It's on the friends list.
Is there any user using Facebook payment, and what's the stack on that? And is Facebook payment integrate with iOS 6? Does it integrate with Passport? Passport, I think.
You answer the first part. Actually, you can answer both because you have both users, right?
Well, I mean, it's all in transition, right? So we do use Facebook credits as primary payment, and for the mobile apps, basically wherever, whatever platform the player makes the charge on, that's where the money goes. But with the change away from Facebook credits, I'll let you explain that one.
So effectively, Facebook credits was a fictitious kind of currency holding space where effectively you put your money into Facebook credits and then you spent it on King coins. Or we took away the intermediate step, so now you can put your dollars directly into King coins without the intermediate step, and we assume that would lead to greater transaction directly into the apps. But actually, I mean, that's once it's in King coins. I don't know if that's real. I don't know what you're calling, but you can actually, those King coins can then follow you as you go into apps that have identity. So if you log into your iOS app, you can actually spend those there. The key condition from all the various platforms is if the transaction starts in my platform, I want you to use my payment mechanism, which is the rules that iOS applies. So there's Facebook credits for mobile web. If it's a native app, you have to abide by the rules of the platform.
Sorry about this, but this is kind of important, I think. Nowadays, people have hundreds and hundreds of friends. For me, as a retailer, I want to zone in on the important friends for that person. So I know internally you guys have this thing called Edge Rank. Do we have access to that?
I mean, you can figure it out. If user, I mean, you can actually track signals between different people when they log in. If me and Matt actually both log into your service, you'll actually be able to correlate the fact that we checked in a number of places where we're actually tagging pictures together. So there's actually strong signals to figure out affinity between users. When I log in, I give you my friends' information. You're just going to get a dumb list of user IDs. But what you actually end up doing, or what, let's say, Spotify ends up doing, is actually they rank people that are active on their service higher. So actually they end up using the more engaged users on your site, on top of the funnel on the right-hand side, to actually get you to engage with them. That doesn't necessarily reflect how close an affinity you have to them. So, how could you actually do it? You can do a couple of things. One is actually building it ex post facto. You can actually build groups on the fly of my kind of BFFs, and you can actually have communication channels just for those friends. And they can effectively, people can be explicitly telling you these 5 people are the ones I care about the most. Strong signal, and actually probably on the gaming side it's true. Strong signal, especially for shopping clubs, might be the 5 friends that I invite to transact, because it's people I think that are most likely going to convert, and therefore A, I'm comfortable spamming them about some offer, but B, they also have probably profiles that I think as a friend that are likely to fit your site, which I know them better than you do, right? So that would be probably the strongest signal I would use.
Another one I was thinking, can we query like what friend you're writing on his wall? Like which friends do you write on the walls?
Stream is an extended permission, which actually gets some rejection, but you can get the stream information.
Okay, cool.
You can also though query what the friends like and do something with that.
Yeah, it's like
But Matt said that's one of the no-go permissions.
no, likes come with the user profile. That's if Philip and I both like aggressive rap, maybe a high overlap of the fact that we both like NWA and a couple other rappers, maybe that actually signals something about our taste and affinity, but doesn't signal at all that we actually hang out together and go to concerts together.
NWA unfortunately doesn't do any concerts anymore.
I don't know.
All right. Cool. Thanks, guys. This was highly informational. I enjoyed it a lot, and I think so did the rest. So let's give a round of applause.